You're listening to Keeping It 100 with Mel and Bruce, featuring Larry Carroll, sponsored by the 100 Black Men of Las Vegas. What they see is what they'll be. I'm Mel Tiller, your host. I'm thrilled to be with you. And today's guest is a candidate for city council, and she wants to be the city councilwoman representing Ward 3. Her name is Melissa Clary. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm thrilled to have you on board today. You want to be a part of the Las Vegas City Council. So tell me this, why do you want this position?
Yeah. So my biggest reason for running, it's really to improve quality of life for everybody in Ward 3. You just need to take a drive through the ward and you can see the level of despair with closed business. Sure, we've made some gains. We've opened some new business. We've done some new development. But the level of despair with rising homelessness, we have pockets of some pretty bad crime. It's a burden to people living there, and I think we can do better. I think our ward requires greater attention and service, and I've been willing to do that. I'm giving it one more shot since I ran last time for this seat when it was an open seat. I had pledged to support the incumbent, and I just haven't been happy with the performance and the level of service we've gotten. So I'm in this one.
I love that. Okay, let's get specific. Let's talk about 3 specific things that you see going on that you want to change.
Yes. So the first one, like I mentioned, is rising homelessness. And I know that's a problem everywhere. However, I think we can do better with how we're approaching the subject altogether. So as a resident, I have participated in our continuum of care, which is the consolidated applicant that works with all the regional entities and stakeholders who are in the realm of homeless outreach to get the federal funding that we primarily rely on year to year to address homelessness. And the city's approach has not been what the federal model has asked for or recommended, which is housing first. We really need to get people off the streets and housed before you can attend to any of what got them there, whether it's addiction, job loss, health issues. You know, that's really the framework. And there are a number of pieces and procedures that are just not adding up to making a dent in the solution or the problem. So that's first and foremost what I want to.
Okay, so talk to me about exactly how you would do that. I'm hearing housing first. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So tell me exactly how you would get people housed first and how you would go after this money. I'm assuming that there are extra funds that you are talking about that we can get from the government. Tell me exactly how you would do this.
Yeah, so it's not so much that pool of funding is from HUD, and it's pretty it's comparable year after year. There are some innovation funds to it. That's just a little bit more to the pot that we can apply for. And that's working with it doesn't have to just go through the city. It can be community partners that we partner with, which we do on some of these wraparound services that are provided. But we have to think beyond just that same pool of money. So that's number one. We're not as innovative applying for different grants that we can apply for. Thankfully, some of the policies have been modified, looking at things like using Medicaid funds towards rental subsidy. So that's a new development. and the city should be right there at the forefront to look at how we can address being able to use this new funding application. Well, same old funding, but in a new way applied to housing. So that's something we can partner with our nonprofit stakeholders who are in the realm providing services. Where we can be better stewards as well is opening up additional housing. So looking at opportunities for what I want to do as a council person is have the types of housing right on that scorecard. So we know exactly which types of housing we're lacking, the number of units, the folks in the queue. So we use a database, an information management database called HMIS. So we kind of know who's on the street, and we need to look at where are the gaps for the types of services needed with the folks in the queue, the types of housing. I really want to get more integral with that data so that it's driving a lot of our policy decisions. And I don't see that happening. It's really roughly communicated to us. I think the approach has been more so looking at the courtyard as a low barrier shelter, which, yes, that's a piece of the puzzle, but it shouldn't be where we dump all taxpayer dollars and say that we're working on the solution with this courtyard, because it's not the solution. It's a piece of the puzzle. And I think where we can break down, like I said, the housing numbers, looking at, we have to get creative. We have to look at, in Ward 3, we have a number of manufactured housing parks, so like mobile home parks. They have vacant spaces. You know, we need to look at where we have immediate hookups. We can
So
be
the mobile home parks. Okay, so you're telling me that you would house some people in mobile home parks. Great. Where are these mobile home parks located?
We have several on the east side of Ward 3. So obviously that's a conversation to be had with the property management companies, looking at the vacancies. But some of them, there are partial stewards or administrators over some of those parks who offer subsidized housing through our housing authority. So I
So
would
are
be
we talking
looking,
section eight here?
that's one program. Yeah. So
Okay.
we
And
we could
so how
look
many,
at,
so talk to me about how many of these people could you house using your solution?
well, that's only one tool, right? So,
Okay.
and I don't have the data in front of me. That's really getting into the details and the weeds and where we're at in the queue. That's something I want to do as a council person. I want to put that information out in the forefront so that we're all aware, you know, so that it's very apparent and people can really get behind, okay, this makes sense. We're short these many units. We need more communities that are willing to take these vouchers. We need, you know, if we can dispel some of the myths around the problem and really start to address the solution, I think that more people will get on board. And that'll be something I know the county has done very well in speaking with property managers and with landlords to get engaged in welcoming people on vouchers, and a lot of our nonprofit community that does housing placements. They've opened up to me about where we are effective and where we have gaps in that arena. So I think a lot of this, the council person can be effective if they're using the data, working with the network of folks working in this field and really starting to break down those barriers so that we can make housing happen and we can get people off the street. Because right now we're just shuffling people from place to place.
Okay. So I like the idea of the mobile home parks. Where else would you place them?
So I would also look at, I'd also look at creative solutions in land use and planning tools. You know, it's hard when you are landlocked like Ward 3 is. You know, we're inside the urban core of the city, so it's not like we can just open up some public lands and wham bam, put some new subdivisions in. Like we have limited options. I know that the city has looked at an old golf course that they've made an arrangement on for housing in the future. So that is an area in the future that is opening up housing that wasn't there before. However, we can get creative with when you're looking at mass production units with developers, you have to be able to replicate a design that they can apply on a larger scale for the cost benefit. And to work with them, we can probably assemble some larger parcels by doing some land swaps. So where we don't have large enough land parcels, we can work to do swaps with other parcels perhaps, so that we can make projects happen. We also can get creative with, going up. We need to go vertical where we can do sustainable vertical infill. That's something that the city can get better about assisting with. Do we come in and help on the utility side? Or do we come in and provide tax credits? They're going to make some of these projects pencil so that we can get housing to come to fruition. And looking at innovative design options where maybe you're doing more townhomes, multifamily, that are, more linear or not your typical kind of sprawled out subdivision, because we don't have that space in Ward 3. And looking at funding for rehabbing older properties, that's certainly something that we can do. And adaptive reuse, we don't really talk about that much. I know it's for some folks, it's kind of like, well, we can build new here. But as you have an aging community, adaptive reuse can be a smart tool, because we have, old big box stores that have closed, or different office professional that's sitting vacant. Well, let's renovate that, rehab it, and make it housing.
Okay, so talk to me about the funding, and let's talk about cost. How much do you believe it would cost to do what you want to do and to get these people off the street?
Sure. Well, everything's expensive today, right?
Everything has a cost.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm not proposing that government's going to foot the bill on all of this, right? Because that's just you and I, the taxpayer.
Right.
So that's not cost effective, because people are struggling just to stay in their own homes. So we really have to look at where we can do creative financing on the private side as well. One organization I've been learning a lot from that does look at how to get these projects to pencil and how other states are doing it is the Nevada Housing Coalition, which is a fairly young entity, but all of its members are involved in the housing realm. Or in some form or fashion, homeless service outreach. And I think with all of these people at the table, we've explored different options for how to get some of these projects to pencil. And I think there are tools there, and we haven't utilized all of them. But there are options for capital. There are grants out there to get some affordable housing projects off the table. There certainly are tools in existence beyond what we're used to. What we're used to seeing just a developer come to the table and I'm gonna build something. Now it's really a tough market to make, especially affordable housing pencil, unless we're bringing in some concessions. The government is taking off some, maybe we're coming to the table with utilities provisions, something that we can do. And in Ward 3, it's challenging because we're old infrastructure. So it makes these projects that much more expensive, especially if you have some requirements that can be really tough, like undergrounding utilities. That gets super expensive. So where we can come in and assist with certain things, that could be an option that we can look at. because maybe where those utilities are, it's something that we wanted to do anyways. You know, we have to pull together the resources, and it has to be a multi-stakeholder approach. It can't just be government doing this or the developer community doing this. Because we're seeing people are starting to be out of work on the development side too, right? Things have kind of slowed down in certain areas, so we have to be cognizant of that too.
So tell us exactly, where is Ward 3?
Yeah, so I wish I had a map. Uh, but we are primarily downtown to the east side. So we are where City Hall is on Main downtown. That is really kind of the middle, the central location, and where I live in Huntridge neighborhood, that's really in the middle. But we go up to Owens to the north, Nellis to the east. We sort of jog down Charleston, down to Sahara, and now we picked up in redistricting west of the I-15, all the way, so south of Sahara, all the way to Decatur. We have that whole Penwood Arville area, and where Area 15 is. That whole project is in Ward 3, and then we're back across the freeway with Arts District and downtown. So it's a very sort of sprawling ward that crosses the I-15 even now.
All right, so we've talked about housing, and we could spend hours and hours talking about housing. Give us two other issues that you believe we need to address right away in Ward 3.
Yeah. So public safety, which, you know, often ties with, so on the housing one, it was really with homelessness. I think housing, homelessness kind of go hand in hand.
Yes.
Um, but public safety is a big one because and some of this is when you address some of the factors of homelessness. For example, you have folks who are mentally ill on the streets, and they're a safety hazard to themselves oftentimes, where they can't take care of themselves. And they could potentially, depending on, you know, what their ailment is, they could potentially harm others. So that's one aspect. The skyrocketing number of deaths by vehicles on our streets, our roadways. We've experienced a high number of growing roadway or vehicular deaths, either, you know, running over pedestrians or bicyclists, or just high rate of speeds, impaired driving, distracted driving. We're seeing a lot of that. So that ties right in with safety measures I want to address, working with our law enforcement, which I'm super stoked I was able to secure their endorsement and backing. So I'm very grateful to them, because you cannot be successful in this seat, I think, without our law enforcement, being a community partner. And then in addition, thinking safety wise, you know, our young people, we have, I don't have figures in front of me, but in my ride-alongs with the police, we've seen some growing gang recruitment and young gang escalation. So we have some lower socioeconomic neighborhoods where I think gangs can more easily build membership. You know, they're recruiting because you have kids who maybe they have no adult supervision, or they're congregating in really dense multifamily complexes, and it's easier to sort of fall behind or just hang out with the wrong crowd. And we're seeing more gang activity, and you can see a lot of the taggings sort of marking their turf across the ward. And that's something that at a recent First Tuesday meeting, I brought up with my local area command downtown, just the need to communicate how we address some of these gang markings, and making sure that their task forces see it before it gets painted over, so that we can start to better track some of that activity. And then it's stolen vehicles. I mean, that's prevalent, I think, everywhere. I think they've reduced the percentage because they did have, Metro had a big push to bring that down. So you're seeing those numbers drop. But in Ward 3, we do see a lot of where those vehicles are either stolen or dumped. So that's something I'd want to work closely with them on, just so that, we have a lot of older neighborhoods or some of these multifamily complexes that they don't have garages or they can't easily still store a vehicle. So that puts us at probably greater risk in a way that our vehicles are going to get stolen. So that's an area I want to address too as part of public safety. I could probably go on and on that too.
Yes,
Because we have
yes,
a lot of vacant
big issue.
buildings.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
we do want to feel safe. We do want to feel safe. But let's move on to the third issue that you have.
sure. Okay, so my third issue is greater economic development. We have seen some gains. It's not always equitable, I think. And that there can be a fine line with that in terms of who's coming in to do development or what types of projects are coming in, because obviously you can't discriminate against, okay, this person in other than like zoning laws and things, you can't say, well, this business can't come in here. So there are special use permits where people can look at, okay, I want to add another bar. So that's always sort of a challenge when we're looking at the types of businesses coming in, because quite frankly, I hear from so many people, and I know it myself living where I live. We want more grocery stores. So we
Yeah.
want certain amenities, certain basic amenities that we don't have, or I know the profit margin can be small on some of those things, so you don't see them as often. But we're in a food desert, a lot of our ward. There aren't some of these basic necessities. And so you get people who are leaving the ward to shop somewhere else because they can't access things they need. So I think we have to be more sensitive to that and how we plan and shape the city and how we recruit and sort of entice people to come in to open up shop in Ward 3. So I want to work with our redevelopment agency to do more to entice certain types of businesses to come to the ward. So looking at where those gaps are and what we can do to bring in more of that activity. And then also as part of economic development, looking at some of this can get really in the weeds, but looking at, where, what is the equity in how we're assisting different, culturally different types of businesses,
Yes.
is there education and information available to, I've come across Latino owned businesses who they don't understand the licensing perhaps, or some of what it takes to be in business legally. So we've seen them challenged by the process and they can get fined, and it's hard to maneuver that government process from time to time. So you do see that more often in certain parts of our ward. And folks just don't know what are the rules, what are the regulations. So I'd like to see, instead of always forcing people to come to City Hall, let's get out in the community and educate folks. I know the recent, well, I don't think it hasn't totally gone through the city's processes yet, but Clark County has looked at the sidewalk vendor ordinance and the regulations around that. We have to get out into the community and talk to some of these people so that people are aware of what the regulations are. We can assist some of them. And, quite frankly, maybe there's a grant program for some of these startup fees. I know Small Business Administration has a lot of resources. The state has some resources. The city has a few. But where we can do better to get out to the people and provide some of this guidance, I think it would help everybody.
I like that. So if let's say that there is a businessman listening to our program today, and they want to start a business and they want to locate it in Ward 3, who would they talk to when they go down to the city to find out all of the things that they need to know in order to get a business up and running in Ward 3 and make sure that they're in compliance? What department, what individual would they speak to?
Right. Well, first they could start with business licensing to be walked through, what type of business they're doing. If they're doing a brick and mortar business, that gets very different because now you're adding in planning. So you would want to go to the planning department as well, where they could speak to, if you have a location already in mind, they could look at the zoning information and make sure you don't need other licenses or permits. So I would start with business licensing because they can also refer you to what, if it's health district information you need because you're working in food or some food handling, they can help guide you through that. So I would start with business licensing.
Okay, fantastic. You have been wonderful with your time. I love your passion. What would you like to leave our audience with?
Yeah, well, I certainly appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all. And truly, my heart is in public service. I have worked in the private sector at an early age, and that's when I went back to working in public service because I just have a heart for helping people. And I want to see safer and more livable neighborhoods for everybody in Ward 3. And whether it's me up there or someone else, I want to spur more attention and service for our area. And that's really why I'm in this. I want to do more for our community that truly makes us the best place to live, work, and play. So I would appreciate anybody's support. You can vote for me starting May 25th through June 7th during early vote, or on June 11th, our election day. Melissa Clary for Las Vegas City Council Ward 3. So thank you so much, Mal.
How do our listeners get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can call me personally, but all of my information you can get to through my website, which is just my name, melissaclary.com.
All right, that sounds fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, her name is Melissa Clary. She wants to be the Las Vegas City Councilwoman representing Ward 3. You've been listening to Keeping It 100 with Mel and Bruce, featuring Larry Carroll, sponsored by the 100 Black Men of Las Vegas. What they see is what they'll be. I'm Mel Tiller, your host, and until next time, keep it 100.